Hey everyone, Mitch coming in with the Commander Core Studio. Welcome to the show. So, Lost Caverns of Ixalan spoiler season week 2 is here. We're starting things off nice and early with a crazy cool brand new card that we got, well, not too long ago. So let's jump into it with the Ancient One, who definitely talks like that, if it talks at all, because it's like a dinosaur spirit god thingy, though it's not technically a dinosaur, it doesn't look like, but it's got like a dinosaur skull on it. I don't know. Anyways, an 8/8 spirit god for just 2 mana. Yeah, that's right. Blue-black into mirror. Descend 8. It can attack or block if you have less than 8 permanent cards in your graveyard. So again, although this does have a ton of power and a ton of toughness for just 2 mana, yeah, maybe one of the kind of largest differences between, you know, power and toughness and actual mana value, like Phyrexian, whatever that one is. Oh goodness, it's not coming to me. It's early in the morning. There is a slight downside to it where you can't really do much with it. I mean, there are some things you can, you know, utilize it for, though, with that power toughness for just 2 mana. That being said, once you get that 8, yeah, there you go. Just start swinging. This thing's going to be huge. On top of that, you can obviously help yourself with that with the ability. Pay 2 in Dimir. Draw a card, discard a card. When you do, target player mills cards equal to discarded card's mana value. So this is nice because it allows you to target a player. Any player. It does not specify opponent, doesn't specify yourself, so it is flexible in that way that early on, yeah, you can utilize this to loot and then also mill yourself. And of course, if you mill something, if you discard something large enough, you could potentially just mill yourself enough to immediately be able to swing with this. So by the time you activate this, you could just be swinging again. So basically, yeah, I mean, you're going to be utilizing a deck that probably has a good amount of permanence in it, a good amount of mill in it, and a good amount of cards that have a high mana value, so you can really, again, utilize that effect to the fullest. Now, I'm not saying you need a full deck with all high converted mana costs. You don't need a full deck with just all permanence, but it's definitely things to keep in mind. And also, hey, this can also obviously be a win condition as well. If you have a mill win condition, you can be like, okay, cool, yeah, I've got a 12 mana converted mana cost essentially card in my hand. I'm going to discard it. I'm going to mill you 12. Maybe I've got a way to double that. Maybe I've got a way to maybe get that back from my graveyard, back into my hand, do it again. Maybe I've got a way to maybe reanimate a massive thing out of my graveyard. So definitely consider ways to play with, again, drawing, discarding, getting things out of your graveyard, utilizing those things in your graveyard, and yeah, maybe even just utilizing this as a Voltron commander in a way, because again, at 8 power, you are more than 1/3 of the way there essentially to take a player out in what? 3 shots, and yeah, if you just get +3, +0, essentially, like, you know, with like a Luxon Warhammer, that's 2 shots. If you got double strike, you can obviously make that into a 1-shot KO as well. So there's different avenues to victory with this one as well. So yeah, a pretty exciting commander. And yeah, if you are interested in this commander, make sure you check out that card list link in the description below. On this episode, I'm going to be taking you through budget buys and price your picks. Cards that are less than $1, cards that are more than $1. So with all that said, well, let's jump into those cards. First up, when it comes to mill, well, again, you do kind of want some ways potentially to mill yourself, like a Perpetual Timepiece. Artifact for 2, tap, mill 2, pay 2, exile, shuffle any number of target cards from your graveyard back into your library. So this is one where, yes, it could have some extra utility. It depends on really how you're going to be building this deck again, because if you're just going to depend on your commander to actually get you to that amount so that you have 8 permanents in your graveyard, and you have a ton of like high mana value, again, you don't really want a lot of low ones and ones that, I'm not saying this one isn't inflexible, but again, this one only mills you, doesn't mill your opponents. That being said, there is a component to it where it can prevent you from, well, milling and also maybe get some things back too. So there is kind of a push and pull with this commander, so make sure you're kind of considering cards like this one depending on your build, all right? Moving on though, one that you might want to consider anyways, cut your losses. This one is not a permanent, and again, you don't have to build your deck with just 100% all permanents. That might be a way to do it if you really want to say like, okay, I want to say like if I discard a card that has mana value 7 or more, I automatically hit that threshold that my commander can then attack and block as well. That being said, this one is pretty massive. Casualty 2, a sorcerer for 6 mana. Target player mills half their library rounded down. That is massive to essentially say, you know what, I'm going to mill, again, either myself to ensure that I get to that amount and maybe have some things in your graveyard that you can utilize, or yeah, mill a player down a ton, potentially mill them, you know, again, twice essentially with this, or mill 2 different players, and again, be able to utilize your commander to take them out. And then when it comes to a creature that might be able to do this, a permanent that can do this, Fleet Swallower. 6/6 fish for 7 mana. When it attacks target player, mills half their library essentially. Again, target player doesn't have to be a player that you're attacking, which is huge. So it can be yourself, it can be a different opponent, it can be that opponent, obviously. But yeah, a way to essentially say, yeah, I'm going to be able to get that player down, get that opponent down, or again, ensure that if I mill half my library, I will, unless you've got like all Spellslinger deck and not a lot of lands, you will get to that amount where your commander can then attack as well. Next up, Metalwork Colossus. Now let's talk about some cards that get really high up into that mana value. Again, 7 is already a lot like we talked about earlier, but 11. 10/10 Construct's going to cost X less to cast for a total mana value of non-creature artifacts you control. You can also sacrifice 2 artifacts to bring this back from your graveyard to your hand. So that can be huge because, yeah, you can sacrifice some artifacts to bring this back after you maybe discarded it and then mill someone again for 11. Again and again and again. And also, yeah, it's a good threat. And if you do have a commander like this where you want to activate that ability a good amount of times, chances are pretty likely you've got a good amount of mana rocks in this deck. And this is probably going to cost, well, 0 for you to actually cast when you do want to get it out. When it comes to also some ways to cast something for a lot less, Shadow Mortality. 7/7 Avatar for 15 mana, but it's going to cost X less to cast, basically. If your life total is less than your starting life total, it's going to cost X less to cast for X the difference. So essentially, if you go down to, what is it, 27, essentially, then yeah, you can cast this for just 2 mana. In Commander, chances are pretty likely that you're going to get down there. So there you go. Being able to cast this for just 2, sure, if you want a 7/7, or again, more likely, utilizing it as a way to mill someone for 15, which again, can be a ton. Next up, one that helps out in a couple different ways. How about Liliana, Death's Majesty? 5 starting loyalty for 5 mana, +1, you get a 2/2 black zombie, and you also mill 2. So again, that helps you in multiple ways. -3, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It's also a black zombie. Cool. The most important thing again is though, hey, let's just reanimate something pretty massive out of my graveyard and yeah, be able to utilize it right away. And -7 to destroy all non-zombie creatures. Unfortunately, our zombie, or not zombie god, our spirit god is not a zombie spirit god. That being said, potentially a one-sided-ish board wipe, again, in combination with that reanimation effect as well. Also, when it comes to, again, our commander, like I said, there are different aspects, different avenues to victory with this one. You could go mill. You could also go, hey, yeah, I've got an 8/8 for 2 mana. If I can start swinging pretty quickly right away, I can take players out in no time. Something like Fire Shrieker, equip creature as double strike. Yeah, a great way to say, oh yeah, my commander's hitting for 16 now. And again, if you just have a simple, +3 power, essentially, with a, like a Loxodon Warhammer, it could be a one-shot KO. And yeah, if you have ways to get through, that'd be great as well. Speaking of ways to get through, Mask of Grizzlebrand. Which is flying and lifelink, so a way to get through on most opponents without evasiveness, also a way to gain an absurd amount of life and powder life total. Speaking of that, we can utilize that life total because when that equipped creature dies, you can pay X life for X power if you do draw X cards. Again, a way to take advantage of our commander, even if it can't attack or block with this, is to say, okay, I equip it up. If it happens to get taken out by maybe a board wipe or some removal, or we sacrifice it or whatnot, yeah, I can draw like, 8 cards essentially for just paying 2 mana to get my commander out and 3 to get this on that. That's pretty fantastic. Speaking of fantastic, Fraying Sanity, with that most recent reprint, I didn't realize it was actually budget friendly until I actually looked into this list. Aura Curse for 3 mana. At the beginning of each end step, enchant player mills X cards or X the number of cards in their graveyard for any of this turn. Basically, it doubles out the player's mill. So again, if you slap this on one of your opponents, you're like, okay, cool, yeah, I'm going to be taking you out twice as fast with my commander, making you just mill a ton of cards. Again, if you do that shadow essentially, right, be able to say, okay, yeah, you have 15, okay, now it's 30. All of a sudden, that's like a third of your library. You're probably going to be gone quite quickly. Speaking of which, another card that I didn't realize was budget friendly with that reprint, Force Fruition, a really cool card, 6 mana, enchantment. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, they draw 7. Now, again, that might seem like a great thing. Like, yeah, I get to draw 7 cards, a full new hand every single time I cast a card. If you've never played against this card, that goes quite quickly because every single time you cast a spell, you're essentially milling yourself in a way. Yeah, you get access to those cards, sure, but a ton of cards being forced to draw every single time you cast a spell, you're going to round out cards in no time, and you are going to lose in no time, again, especially in combination with a lot of these fantastic mill effects. Next up, though, let's talk about the pricier picks. Again, cards outside of my budget, but might be within yours. First up, Training Grounds. An incredible card, especially with a commander like this with a great activate ability. Hey, that activate ability costs 2 less to activate, essentially. Every single one of your creatures with active abilities, I should say, have 2 less to activate. So this one now, your commander is just going to cost, what, blue-black to do that, looting effect, and then also be able to mill. That is huge. You can do it, well, twice as efficiently, twice as effectively, do it probably twice as much throughout the game now. And again, with this kind of a commander, you probably have a good amount of ramp with this kind of a commander, so you can activate ability. Getting just this out can do even more. And yeah, there aren't too many effects like this, but of course, you are in black. You've got ways to tutor it out, so make sure you're considering that as well. Next up, Bruvek the Grandiloquent. That's a big word. 1/4 Human Visor for 3 mana. If an opponent would mill one or more cards, they mill twice that many instead. This, unfortunately, doesn't help you mill yourself twice as many. That's okay, though. Again, you can probably pretty easily get to that 8 amount pretty quickly just with your commander and with maybe discarding even just 1 card. But yeah, being able to double up every single way that you mill your opponents, that's pretty huge. And again, it depends on the way you're going to take your opponents out. But yeah, that definitely makes that mill strategy much more effective against them. When it comes to the discard strategy, though, we can also take advantage of discarding cards with Archfiend of Ifnir. Whenever you cycle or discard another card, you get a -1/-1 counter on each creature opponent's control. So every single time we activate that ability again, we get card selection with that looting effect. We get to mill a player, and then we also get to take our opponent's creatures down. With this in play, it's going to be incredibly difficult for opponents to keep any creatures on the board, or any effective creatures, I should say, because even if they have, say, a 6/6 on the board, whittling it down again and again and again to make it even smaller, it's huge. And of course, it's going to make it hard for them to attack or block because, hey, okay, you swung, I've got open mana. Yeah, I could probably just, deactivate my ability, discard a card, and then all of a sudden, that creature's smaller. Take creatures out, make them even smaller. Yeah, have fun. Moving on, speaking of fun. For you, Bone Miser. Whenever you discard a creature card, you get a 2/2 zombie, or discard a land, you get mana, black. Whenever you discard a non-creature non-land card, draw a card. So, first up, you're discarding non-creature, non-land. Now, all of a sudden, instead of it just being parity with, card selection with that looting effect, now it's card advantage. You go up 2, you discard 1. That's fantastic. You also get free mana with this. You also get free creatures with this. This is a huge card for you to get into play with your commander's activation. Speaking of which, and speaking of just, drawing you more cards, Very Sage's Insight. If you draw a card except the first one, you draw 2 cards instead. So basically, hey, let's just activate our commander's ability. Let's get even more card advantage. Let's just go through our deck so quickly and, get the right cards that we need to win. So that's a great one. Thought Reflection, another great one as well to consider. Speaking of which, Darksteel, Mollyth, a really cool card. Artifact for 8. It's indestructible, so hard to deal with. Once each turn, you may pay 0 and pay the mana cost for a color spell you cast from your hand. Depends on the way that you build your deck, obviously, but again, if you've got a good amount of mana rocks in the deck, which again, I highly recommend, if you maybe have some massive artifact creatures, and we'll get to another one here in a little bit, cool, you can essentially get them out for free. And yeah, if you dig through your deck, if you are able to essentially set yourself up properly, you can have some massive plays with this, and yeah, have some fun. And again, keep considering that, hey, you might want to have a good amount of cards in this deck that have a really high mana value, so again, your commander's ability can be even more effective. So yeah, 8 mana, that's quite nice. 11, even more so though. A 4/5 Golem, Microsith Golem. Penny for artifacts, so again, it's going to cost 1 less for each artifact you control, which is massive because again, if you get a lot of mana rocks in play, this can cost basically nothing, maybe even nothing. On top of that, artifact creature spells you play have affinity for artifacts as well. So essentially, now all those artifact creatures, again, depends on what direction you take it. You can take it really heavy into artifact creatures because there's a lot out there that have a very high mana value. Draco, anyone? Being able to play them for a lot cheaper. Not that you'd want to actually play Draco, but regardless, being able to get a lot of artifact creatures in play can definitely be a way to win as well. And when it comes to artifacts with a high mana value as well, the Cauldron of Eternity can be one that can definitely help you out. Ledger artifact that costs 12 mana, so again, a very high mana value, but it's going to cost so much cast for each creature in your graveyard, essentially, so that can cost as low as just 2 mana very easily. Whenever a creature control dies, goes on the bottom of your library. On top of that, pay 3 mana, tap 2 and a black, I should say. Pay 2 life, return dark creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Activate on sorcery speed. So a repeatable reanimation effect like this one can be massive again, especially since you have a lot of ways to get a lot of creatures in your graveyard and a lot of ones that have a pretty high mana value and are probably pretty brutal to actually deal with. But now this episode is coming to a close. It's time for me to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts are on the Ancient One, who definitely talks like that. Yeah, a very interesting commander. Again, like a self-mill opponents, big-bodied creature that can Voltron as well. Yeah, it's a pretty spicy commander, and one that, again, you can do a lot of really cool things with. You can go full permanence, you can go like heavy into artifacts, you can do a lot of really cool things. So yeah, let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on it. If you are interested in any of the cards that I mentioned on this episode, make sure you check out that card list link in the description below. And of course, as always, well, stay tuned to this channel for more exciting quick takes and spoilers. And yes, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.